Good morning. I couldn't help but notice during introductions when visitors were introducing themselves, we had some very good Korean speakers, Mrs. Wagner and others. So I want to try something, maybe this is a first time for me. I want to give you a bilingual message today. Korean and English. 안녕하세요. Now it's time for the English part. You know, thinking about a year ending and a new year coming, I've thought about this the last few days and a few things come to mind. One is, the older I get, the more quickly the years seem to tick off. And it's hard to believe that 2013 is just around the corner. Another thing I thought about, which relates to our text this morning that may be particularly appropriate for us, is that if you've been at Handong, you don't have to stay here very long to realize that people at Handong are very, very, very busy people. It's good, I think, to work hard and to work for the Lord, but there's a danger here of allowing ourselves to become too busy for our own good, too busy to really be involved with what I think God primarily wants us to be involved with. If you're here, you'll find that you must become wise and good at saying no. There will always be another invitation or a request to join a Bible study, an early morning prayer group, another club activity. It goes on and on and on and on. I think students, to be honest, here many, if not most, are too busy. And that may not be limited only to students. So I hope this message this morning is a good reminder and challenge for us. The text probably you're very familiar with. This takes place in the village of Bethany, a small village about 3 kilometers from Jerusalem. Jesus seems to stop by this village on different occasions. He was very much at home with Mary and Martha and their brother Lazarus. He loved them very much, and they knew that he loved them. This seems to be the first occasion where he visits them, but we know in John chapter 11 that he visits them again when he raises Lazarus from the dead. And we know that they are convinced of his love for them. He visits again shortly before he goes to the cross, his last time in Jerusalem. At least 3 times, if not more. This is a place that was very comfortable, almost like a home to Jesus, it seems. If we look at verse 38, let's read that one more time. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to them. It seems like, at least to some degree, Martha plays the key role in this initial meeting. She's specifically mentioned as opening her home to Jesus. She's a central figure in this first meeting. If we look at verse 39, we see that she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. Mary sat at the Lord's feet. That can bring different pictures to our mind. It could be that Mary is at Jesus' feet. This is the place of a servant to a master. It's the place of a student to a teacher. Remember, Paul is referred to as having been taught or brought up at Gamaliel's feet. It can be thought of as a place of the worshiper to his or her God, the one who is being worshipped. In verse 40, we see that Martha was distracted. This word "was distracted" is taken from a Greek word which literally means to drag all around. To drag all around. If you're familiar with the English idiom, I picture Martha as running around like a chicken with its head cut off. Is there an equivalent Korean idiom? You know, I don't know much about what a chicken does when you cut its head off, but my father grew up in the countryside. He was the youngest in his family, and in that part of Ohio, people traditionally ate chicken for a Sunday lunch. They'd go to church, go to service, have chicken, some kind of chicken for lunch, and my father had a job he didn't particularly care for when he was a boy. He had to go out to the barn with a little hatchet and grab a chicken and chop its head off. That was the first part of the Sunday lunch. And they say that when you cut the chicken's head off, its nerves are still active and it'll just wobble all around till it falls over. That's the idea we get with Martha in this situation. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She was distracted by her preparations, but she was distracted from her Lord. The idea is that her focus was misplaced, placed. It wasn't lost, but it was placed in the wrong position. Her focus was now no longer on the Lord. It was on all the work she had to do. Now we see in verse 40 that she is not so busy that she doesn't take time to stop and speak. She only says a few words, but her few words reveal so very much. They reveal what's in her heart. And she says, she comes to the Lord and she says, Lord, don't you care? Don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Tell her to help me. So we learn that in this short time, Martha's processed a lot of information. And she's come to some strong convictions and conclusions. Unfortunately, they are incorrect. And I think this is something we need to think about is we can do the same thing. We can be led by our feelings. We can interpret the circumstances around us. Sometimes we can come to very wrong conclusions. And it's tricky because I'm sure she felt she was so right. She was so strong. She was so sure of what she was believing, what she was thinking. Lord, don't you care? So she's already entered into judgment at least twice. She's come to the conclusion that the Lord really doesn't care about her the way he should. It's so logical in her mind. If he did, wouldn't he notice what a mess she's in? Wouldn't he find a way to help her? She's also judged her sister. Although it doesn't use this particular word, it seems that she likely has come to the conclusion that Mary is lazy. Mary's a lazy person. All this stuff needs to be done. Obviously, she's busy. She needs help. What's Mary doing? Someone she should be able to count on. Her very sister. Mary's not doing anything. She's just lazy. And so she's angry. She's put out. She's very angry with her sister. She's angry with her Lord. So she comes to these conclusions. God, Lord, you really don't care for me, at least not the way you should. And my sister is lazy, insensitive, and she's left me to do all the work by myself. Is it true? Of course it's not true, but it felt true to Martha. It seemed true. What do we learn, or what can we gather from this? We can gather the fact that, number one, we cannot conclude that Mary was lazy, doing nothing. She was doing something. What was she doing? She was seated at the Lord's feet, and she was listening. She was attentive to his word. We can also conclude that the Lord indeed cares for Martha very greatly, And we see it in his response to her. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about so many things. He doesn't rebuke her for coming to him. He doesn't rebuke her for sharing what's on her heart, but he does lovingly and gently correct her. And he tells her something that we need to hear at Handong and that we need to consider, especially with the new year around the corner. You are worried and upset about many things. Few things are needed. Really, only one. Only one. Mary has chosen the good part. So, we see with Martha, we see frustration. We see self-pity. And we see a heart that judges others. She felt so right about her conclusions. What can we learn? At least two things. One is, no matter what circumstances you find yourself in, if you are a child of God, you must never conclude that the Lord does not care for you. He loves you much, much more than you know. We have an enemy, and he may whisper in your ear, God really doesn't love me. If God loved me, then why did he let this bad thing happen to me? If he's almighty, then he could have prevented it from happening. Well, why didn't he? It must be that he really doesn't love me, or at least not as much as I thought. The whispers of the enemy. He's a liar. He's whispering in your ear. But it may feel like it's true. Circumstances may cry out in your ear to back up the lie of the enemy. Never, 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 if you're a child of God, allow such a thought to settle in your heart and stay. We must always, always reject that lie. The second thing we learn from Martha's example, which is very difficult, and I dare say we've all struggled or failed in this regard before, is we must be very careful about judging our brothers and sisters, especially their motives, especially the intentions of their hearts, which we cannot see. God can see, and God can reveal those, and God will deal with those. We must not go there. I'm not saying or suggesting that we excuse sinful actions in our own lives or in the lives of others. If you see someone who's and they're a Christian and they love God or they want to serve God, and you find them and they're outside the bar and they're drunk, you shouldn't just say, oh, well, I'd better not go there. I'll stay away from that. No, it's obvious that they're in sin, so we should deal with it. What happens if you see our brother Daniel leading in worship and he's filled with the Spirit, he's energetic, he's outgoing? The thought comes in your mind, oh, Daniel, why is he the one who's always up front? Look at his enthusiasm. He's really proud. He's just doing this because he wants everybody to see him. He's doing this for himself, not for God. Don't go there. Don't go there. God knows his heart. What's my responsibility? Believe the best. Believe the best. If the thought or the temptation to believe the worst comes into my mind, reject it and believe the best. And if by some chance there may be some error in my brother or sister's motives, which only God can see and determine and fairly judge, God will deal with my brother or sister. I believe the best. So this is what Martha failed to do with her sister, and it got her into all kinds of wrong attitudes. Now I have a question. Was it wrong for Martha to be serving? Was it wrong? Would it have been better, or would it have been best for Martha to stop going to the kitchen to bring the food out and to just let that alone, leave it aside, and to come and sit down beside Mary at the Lord's feet in this instant? Is that what she should have been doing? And I think if we look very briefly at John chapter 12, this helps us discern a good answer to that question. John chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, this is the third time in Scripture that Jesus is recorded as being at Mary, Martha, and Lazarus' home. And let's read not the whole section, but maybe the first 3 verses. John chapter 12. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, expensive perfume, poured it on Jesus' feet, and wiped his feet with her hair. So we see a scenario that's very similar to what we read about in Luke 10. Jesus comes. What's Mary doing? She takes the perfume and anoints the Lord's feet. What is Martha doing? What's she doing? She's serving. She's serving. So it's not a bad thing that Martha was serving. In this scenario, at least with these 3, everything is right. Everything is proper. Everything is good. The difference here is Martha is not distracted by the preparation she has to make. She is using perhaps her gift in serving to draw her to Jesus. She is worshiping Jesus through serving. She's not distracted. She's not led away. She has not, in this case, neglected the necessary thing. She's serving the Lord through her serving, which is good. Now we see another problem. We won't read on, but you know the section. What does Judas say? Why is all this perfume being wasted? Just being poured out. Very expensive, pure nard. This could have been sold, and a lot of money, a year's wages could have been gathered. What a waste. So now we see there is someone who is being distracted. In this case, it's not preparations or serving that distracts this person, but it's money. Money distracts this person from the one necessary thing. So as we go on, I want to talk about, maybe a couple of practical applications. One, I think, is practical for me personally, maybe for you too. One practical application from John 10:38 through 42 is the necessity of personally learning to sit at the Lord's feet in His Word, listening to His Word, and spending time alone with Him. Some people, students call it QT, quiet time, devotional time. This is a discipline that should be a regular part of our lives. Now, the thing with the disciplines, prayer and time in the Word and quiet time, they are not the end in and of themselves. They are the means to the end. What is the goal? What is the end? Making sure that we're involved in the one necessary thing, which is walking in communion with God. Not just spending a short time in His presence every day, but learning to live in his presence. In John chapter 14, Jesus says this. I'll just read it very quickly. Jesus said, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love him, and we will come to them, and we will make our abode or our home with them. God residing, God being at home in his people. And we need to cultivate the discipline of being filled with his Spirit and making our home in his presence as well. John 15, the word abide. We don't use that word very much. It's an old-fashioned word. Abide being the verb form, abode being the noun form. The same idea. Learning to walk with God, learning to be filled with his Spirit day by day, moment by moment. For many, a daily quiet time, often in the morning, is a wonderful way to start. Now, we do have to be careful that we don't become legalistic about it, or we miss the purpose. Suppose I'm walking across campus and I see my dear brother, Professor Gun Lee, and he seems like something special's happened in his life today, and I see him. I say, Professor, how are you? What's going on? And he says, finally, I've been a Christian for how many years? 35 years. And I've had quiet times for many years, thousands and thousands of them. But today, I had the perfect quiet time. Here's what I did. I prayed this long, and I sang this hymn, and I read this verse, and I did this and this and this. That's not the goal. The goal is not to have the perfect quiet time. The goal is to sit at the Lord's feet and listen to his word. Sometimes I meet students who are learning to have a quiet time, and I ask this question, and it makes them think. So I'll say something like this. I'll say, okay, you're having time with the Lord regularly, right? Yes, I am. I said, well, what happens if one morning you oversleep? You just don't get up and you miss your quiet time and you run off to class. Do you feel guilty? Do you? And a lot of them look a little sheepish and they say, well, yeah, kind of I do. And we have to be careful that the quiet time doesn't become just another of many busy activities that just creates the Martha problem or perpetuates it all the more. Should you feel guilty, I ask them. And they might feel like, well, I didn't have my quiet time, so today's probably not going to be a very good day. Or maybe something wrong might happen today. Or, things probably would have worked better if I'd had my quiet time. Or maybe we might even think this way without actually using these words. We might think, well, maybe God doesn't love me quite as much today because I miss my quiet time. Or maybe God's not really happy with me. Should we think that way? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The discipline is not the end. It's the means to the end. So we have to be careful that a QT or the disciplines don't become the focus instead of God himself. They don't just become another legalistic activity by which we measure ourselves. Why? Well, let's reverse the thinking a little bit. It could be, I'm just trying to establish my own righteousness before God rather than really trusting in the righteousness of Christ. God, surely you will love me a lot today because I had a 2-hour quiet time. There's no need. We cannot establish our own righteousness before God. Christ is our righteousness. And when we find this, you might say, well, what that means is, that means then I can just skip my quiet time all the time and it doesn't matter. No. In fact, just the opposite is true. Once I realize that I'm under God's grace and I've removed myself, or God has removed me from this law of legalism, just the opposite thing will happen. What will happen is, more and more, my devotional time will be a precious time. It will be a time where I really experience God's love and His presence. And it will be something that I want to do, not something that a law that I put myself under, or a drudgery, or another burden. So if you have not yet cultivated this discipline of time alone with God, devotional time, I challenge you to do this. And I think as we grow in the disciplines and we realize what they are truly for, then we cultivate a Mary spirit, the spirit of a true worshiper rather than a Martha spirit. The way that another application might be, and there may be many, one that God has spoken to me about is a little bit different need. As I've been reading through the Gospel of Luke, I want to share just a few verses. Luke chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. We'll read through 4 verses quickly because they all strengthen a certain point. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, left the Jordan, and he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing during those days, and at the end of them he was hungry. So you might say, this is goes on, it's the account of Jesus' time of testing in the wilderness. You would say, wow, my goodness. What was he doing wandering around in the desert? Gosh, if he was going to be there for 40 days, why didn't he take some food along? How many McDonald's do you run to out in the middle of the desert? The occasional Oasis McDonald's. There's no food. It's a lonely place. No likelihood for help. What's he thinking? Well, I think we can see from context that this is very intentional. Jesus had just been baptized by John. He was beginning his public ministry. And we see him doing something that he does throughout his life as a consistent pattern. No matter how busy he gets, no matter how many thousands and tens of thousands of people are crowding around him, he regularly and consistently takes time alone with the Father. And usually he goes to the mountain or the desert or to a desolate place. And so why didn't he have food? I think he was fasting. He was partaking in the discipline of fasting and spending time alone with his Father. The challenge for me is, with a busy Handong schedule, this year, one of my goals is to take regular time away, whatever that means. More than just my devotional time. I want to try to take a weekly time, and whether getting away means getting back and getting lost on one of the trails for a few hours and finding my way back, or whether getting lost means getting off campus and running into Holly's coffee shop and drinking a vanilla delight for 3 hours, whatever that means. I think I need to do this. Because we need time to reflect. We need time to absorb what's going on around us. We need time to pray. We need longer time to spend in God's presence and at His feet. And I think this is something that's very easy to lose at a place like Handong. If we look at Luke chapter 5, verses 15 and 16. Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that the crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sickness. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Luke 16, verses 12 and 13. Luke 6, 12 and 13. Sorry, not 16. Luke 6, 12 and 13. One of these days, or one of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When the morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated apostles. Luke 9, verse 28. Luke 9, verse 28. About 8 days after this, after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him and went up onto a mountain to pray. This was the Mount of Transfiguration. There may be many reasons why Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him, but I think at least one reason is Jesus is modeling for his disciples a discipline which should be a consistent part of their lives as well. So I want to challenge you, and I want to challenge me, as we think about the coming new year, and we think about our busy life at Handong. I think of the Talbot family leaving, when? A week and a half? Can it be that soon? January 12th. So busy. So many things to do. Handong professors, Handong students. So busy. So many things to do. We cannot neglect the one necessary thing. We cannot neglect the one necessary thing. This is the challenge for me this year, and I pray it's something that you would consider as well. And I just want to say one thing. I think it's great that we have our early morning prayer times and devotional times. Those are wonderful. And if you're not used to having a time alone with God, that's something you just feel like, gosh, it sounds good, but how do you do that? I don't know what to do. Please consider joining an early morning quiet time group or prayer time. But beware of allowing group activities to replace time alone with God. We need both. You might say, Professor, but I go to church on Sunday and I go to 3 prayer groups with my friends and I have 5 Bible studies I go to. That's good. But there is no substitute for personally spending time alone with God and in His presence. That's necessary. Absolutely necessary. Mary chose the one good thing. Martha was distracted with all the things she had to do. Will you choose the one good thing this year? Let's pray.